Hey guys, VaulSC here, hope that you're having a good week. Well, N4 has come out and I have played my first live game on the tabletop with N4. Played a couple of games on TTS which are on YouTube, which you can watch already, but here is the first live game and I'm going to do my first slideshow and commentary bat rip. It feels like ages since I did one of those, and it will be between the Combined Army and Svalarheima, the sectorial of Pan-Oceania. 300 points, we're going to be playing Domination, which is the new name for the mission Supremacy in the main rulebook. No classifieds, no HVTs, although maybe that will be coming with the next ITS pack that they bring out. I don't want to talk a lot about the new N4 rules in this video. I want to get straight into the bat rep. I'm going to play a number of games first. I've got a tournament coming up this weekend, and then maybe I'll start to bring out the strategy and tactics videos in the review. I will just make the very brief comment that reviews are mixed, feelings are mixed. There are a lot of things I'm disappointed and unhappy about, and there are some things which I'm grateful for. But that was to be expected. In fact, that's exactly what I thought would happen with N4. There are a few little surprises here and there, and I expected to be dumbfounded by some of the decisions that ZB have made. But let's just calmly take all that to one side and focus on the specifics. Let's have a look at a particular case study, which is this list versus my opponent's list in an actual game, and we'll learn some rules as we go. So I will be playing the Anathematic. The Anathematic has come down in points by a fair bit, instead of having Sucker Punch as his upgrade as an EI person, he has Trinity with +1 burst. So when he moves in range of you, he is burst 4 with the Trinity, which is pretty brutal. And the new hacking devices are a bit more useful now because they can spotlight you in ARO. Targeted state lasts forever unless you reset out of it, as far as I can recall. So I want to be playing this guy a bit more often. Kodali, Corvus Belli have not fixed this interaction between MSV2 and models that can't see MSV2, smoke grenades, and the way that change facing and the order structure works. So you can still move Kodali into the smoke grenade created by the Speculo Killer, and if any models are within 8 inches, they have to basically forfeit their arrow or do a change face dodge. They can now move with their dodge, which helps, but link teams can't delay anymore. So Kodali, if she gets in range of a link team and there's a Speculo smoke grenade there, that link team is going to get eradicated. Your opponent's going to have a very bad time, and people should really be blaming Corvus Belli for not really doing anything about that interaction, because it's still a very valid way of just destroying your opponent if they misdeploy or don't have the right defensive tools. But we'll see. I mean, they can now start dodging away from Kodali, so maybe that's the solution. But I still think people are going to have a pretty bad time in some situations. There's 2 shrouded hackers here. Again, the hackers are not going to go to waste. They're going to be able to throw out targeted state from Spotlight. Anything that's not a basic pleb that's hackable is going to be up against an Oblivion. So basically, you've got assault hackers here without really being that vulnerable. So, I mean, if you expect to be up against killer hackers, you could always just stay in camo state and not bring these out, so I really like this profile. Medtech and Slave Drone, extremely important, because Flash Pulses are in some ways better now because the enemy's got to take 2 saves against a Flash Pulse hit, which just blows my mind. I think it's completely stupid. And the other thing is that when a remote gets rendered unconscious, it drops prone, because remotes can be prone now, and when they get revived, they spring back up again without needing an order to put them back in place. So I would recommend that if you can take Flash Pulse remotes at all, you should take them, and if you can take an engineer in any game, you should take an engineer, because the new immobilization states and stun states and targeted states are quite nasty, and you probably want an engineer around, and the added fact that the medtech is going to be able to revive those flash pulse spots to make them more dangerous. It's really important combination, I feel, and probably will make it into a lot of my early N4 lists. So Q-Drone's in there to do something basically similar. Liberto, for some stupid reason, they've decreased the points rather than raised the points in Liberto, even though the context has changed in Infinity, where a lot of other tags and heavy infantry are less expensive and there's a 15 order cap. It doesn't mean that Liberto is somehow not useful now. I mean, you still have to take the midfield stuff. He's still good at eliminating little bits and pieces out in the midfield and putting his points in zones and getting mines in the way of things. And he's better at dodging. Dodging overall is a more important thing to be doing in Infinity. So I think it's just crazy that they've actually dropped his points even further. Tiger creatures are a little bit different now because they although they berserk, they don't get +6 for the berserk, but they get to move 12 inches and then berserk you if they can see you, which is crazy. And the Sixth Sense, although they can't delay anymore against people, they still get the full Fizz 13 +3 when dodging, so they don't suffer the penalty for the dodge with an 8 without being able to see you. So anybody moves within 8 inches of a tiger creature, you get a free 3-inch move if you can pass the 16 or less. So they're much better for road blocking and intercepting and getting in people's way. And if you see a wounded tag around the battlefield and manage to close in on it, it's a good chance you'll be able to wreck him. The crit, of course, means you take an additional save, so I feel at this point the AP shock weapon is fine, the double action weapon even better, because if you crit you get 3 saves on them. So Tiger Creatures still as good as they've ever been. Imitrons are actually easier to keep them on the board, because if they scatter off the table, they appear on the side of the table. There's nothing about them being destroyed anymore. Also, they are light infantry. They don't appear to be equipment. They support troops. So they go unconscious. I believe you can repair them with the doctor, and you can switch them between combat groups. So they've got better. They haven't got more expensive. Unless I'm wrong about those. I mean, it's still early. I'm going to be wrong about so much stuff. But anyway, Specular Killer's there to combo with Kodali. Specular Killer works in a very similar way as before. There are a few subtle changes, but generally, Specular Killer Smoke Kodali is a pretty brutal and lethal combination. Let's take a quick look at what my opponent's going to be trying out. He has a Svalarheima list and a few ideas here. There's a link team with Shona Carano and Bulletier as a duo. So Shona is extremely good in close combat, whereas the Bulletier is good at shooting things. Cannot get shock anymore from assisted fire, but still good at taking people down. His repeater obviously makes things interesting with the new hacking rules. Fugazi drone bots, for the reasons we talked about, you still want them. Knight of Justice, Missile Launcher, and Link Team, the classic that was very powerful in 3 hasn't changed. He's like Quinn as opposed to like an Orc Trooper or something like that. I prefer the Orc Trooper, but Quinn, pretty cool. MSV1's better now because it sees through smoke. Fusilier Hacker, why not? Machinist Gizmo Kit Palbot, well, you want that to revival your Fugazis. And here's the interesting link team, it's the Kahu special team. He's noticed that the Kahu Feuerbach has +1 burst, so in the Harris it's burst 4 and double action, so it's an extremely destructive gun. He's backing that up with Agnes and Gunnar. We didn't particularly like Gunnar last edition. In this particular edition, I don't know if I like him. Berserk's very good. The extra dodge is nice. He doesn't seem to be immune to shock as far as I can see, which is a problem. 34 points for a guy that could die to a mine. I don't know if I like Gunnar, but that's what he's playing. And then there's the Pathfinder and the Evo Hacker. Evo Hacker there for the assisted fire onto the Bulletier. So let's jump into the game. You'll learn to love my psychedelic filters. So this is the battlefield we're playing on, and this is basically Supremacy. So to remind you guys, if I just grab out the pen, there's obviously the center line of the battlefield. There's objectives 1, 2, 3, and 1 behind this. Then there's the deployment zones, and then there's the quadrants. And at the end of every game round, what you're doing is you're checking to see who has the most points in each zone. So if you have the most points in this zone, you consider controlling it. And maybe you have the one closest to your deployment zone, and then if you manage to kill everything in there, and they only have this one, you have 2-1, or if you capture this one as well, and leave one of these empty, and they only have this one, for example, you can get 2 points at the end of every game round for those kinds of situations, and +1 point for turning on the console. And that's pretty much it. They've made the missions in the rulebook simpler and more streamlined, which is important for getting new players into their game. Okay, so I have lost the initiative roll. My opponent wins the dice roll and opts to take deployment, and I then choose to take second turn, as I often did in N3, and a lot of people sort of turn their nose up at that and raise their eyebrows, thinking that, you know, it's too much of a disadvantage to deploy second, to deploy first and have them attack you. But my theory is still the same. Infinity is still going to be... so much stuff in N4 just hasn't changed. You guys got to bear that in mind. The vast majority of how the game works is still the same. So in a mission where it's basically second turn scoring, if you can defend well enough, if you can survive your enemy's attacks, keep your head down, then you're more likely to win. And again, we're going to be putting that to the test in this N4 game. So deploying my stuff first, I'll just talk you through it. The Imitrons both scatter and end up on the side of the board, so that's great. In fairly safe places, I might add. Then there's the... in fact, you actually get to place them. They don't scatter 16 inches at all. That doesn't even happen, which buffs them significantly. Our drone here, represented by an LF bot, Tiger Creature at the back, Echidron there, one of the Shroudeds up top. Liberto's here, and his mine is inside the building, just poking out along the way there, and there's the Avatar. Very easy to get cover in N4 now. Any amount of obstruction at all, you don't have to have a third of your base obscured, is enough. So abuse that as much as possible. Avatar here, another Tiger Creature, Q drone with HMG, not prone, and then there's the Dr. Wern, which is prone, Flashbot, which is not prone, and there is another Shrouded inside that doorway there, quite importantly. So there's a bit of a look at it. It's prone in the corner. My opponent, let's have a look. This is his left-hand flank, so he's got the Knight of Justice right here. That's prone. That's Richard Quinn, single Fusilier, I believe this one was the hacker, and then there's the Evo Repeater behind them. Everybody is prone, including the Knight. Then through the middle, there's the Engineer here, that sort of Flash Pulse Spot, Engineer's Probot guy, and there's the Pathfinder up top. So that's the Pathfinder in the middle there. On the right-hand side, he's got another Flash Pulse Spot, and then there's this little team with the Kahoo and friends. He's spent a command token to hold back 2 troopers in reserve, which is a new thing you can do in N4, and he's done that so he can put the duo in reserve. It's the beautiful Bulletier and Shona Carano. Am I getting the name right? Shona Carano is with the Bulletier, and it's Agnes and Gunnar who are with the Kahoo, just to remind us. Okay, so I spend a command token to reduce group 1 by 2. That's this group here. So they now move out towards this nearby building, and then they're setting up to take on the Q drone. So I'm just going to move my portrait here. Q drone is situated there in the corner, and he's just poking the Bulletier around to this corner to get this shot. It's the only thing that he can see. The Bulletier will ignore cover because of assist to fire, and will be -3 for mimetism, so 4 dice and 12s, and for me, I'll be 4 dice on 5s. So a pretty significant advantage to the Bulletier. It's just dangerous. I want you guys to appreciate how weak of a strategy this is if you are worried about risk or if you get unlucky. So Bulletier comes around here and doesn't get the job done. That means Shona's not going to get much done either. But you do have the Kahoo there to come around. So I guess his strategy is just to see if the Bulletier makes it, and if he doesn't, brings around the Kahoo. But the odds of the Bulletier getting crit off the board, you got to bear in mind that the Bulletier doesn't really have much armor, and a crit doesn't automatically win the face-to-face roll. So if the Q drone wins it by getting a crit, that's 2 save the Q drone has to make. The Engineer's a long way away, but there's a possibility of him passing both saves. So you've got to think about things a little bit differently. Anyway, he does win the face-to-face roll after moving Shona into the room, of course, and the drone goes down. Crucially, it goes prone after being rendered unconscious, so the Doctor can revive him next turn if the Doctor's also there. And this is such a big change for remotes, I can't overstate it. So now we have the Bulletier moving around here, and I've been waiting for him to do this because I'm trying to set up a trap. There is a distance of 8 inches from here to here where my hacker is basically prone behind a doorway. And instead of just poking around here to take on the flashball spot, he comes a bit further out because he doesn't really need that much cover to obscure the corner of his base. So I surprise him with an attempt to Oblivion with the Shrouded. Flash Pulse does its thing, and the Bulletier shoots back, putting all dice into the Flash Pulse. So we have a free Oblivion from this Shrouded, and then we have the Bulletier succumbing to that. So fortunately for me, I managed to isolate his Bulletier, which shuts down the Bulletier push, which is excellent. And we also have a situation where the Flash Pulse bot takes a hit. Now, importantly, something that kind of went wrong in this game is that The bullet here wins the face-to-face roll against the flashbot. I managed to pass the one homicide I was called on to make. I went to find out whether the remote still have courage, because courage isn't built into remote presence or the remote rule anymore. It's just they've gone and added courage to the profile. So once we'd established that I did have courage, I opted to keep the flash pulse bot there. Several orders later in the turn, my opponent's going to question whether the bot actually died or not, because my opponent was, he put 4 bullets into it and contemporarily forgot that I survived, and that sort of changes the course of the game, so we'll address that in a moment. But seeing that the bulleteer is isolated and can't do anything else, we have the Link team moving out. Kahu in front, Gunnar with this guy with the sword here, and Agnes represented by the Druze trooper. They use Climbing Plus to get the Kahu onto the building. I think it's Kahu with the Climbing Plus, isn't it? There it is there. So he's got Climbing Plus. So the Kahu managed to get up over the wall and crawl prone to the side of this. Note that he doesn't have stealth, and as he comes in range of the Shrouded is able to just hit him with a spotlight, which means that when he attempts to shoot things later in the game, he's going to be in a bit of trouble because everything I shoot at him will be at +3. So remember to be doing that with your hackers, guys, and do take midfield hackers for this reason. We have Gunnar homing in, and his plan here, so he's moving Agnes over into the corner of this room, and then we've got the Kahu on the top, and then we've got the Link leader, which is Gunnar, moving out through here, and his plan is to get into close combat with the Shrouded at some point. Note, though, that I've got a mine in the corner of this room down here, which will have line of sight through the doorway, and Gunnar doesn't have shock immunity, so he has to be really, really careful, and my opponent guesses that it's a mine correctly. So Gunnar does eventually spend his last order coming around the side here from Group 2, and just decides to tank the mine and fire at the Shrouded with the multi-rifle point blank. Again, this is a big risk, and my opponent, I think, would have found himself really long way behind in this game if something goes wrong here. And it's not really a great way to play Infinity, where you're sort of just hoping that nothing goes wrong, because things inevitably do go wrong, and it's such a swingy game. Luckily for him, Gunnar passes the... he had like a 50-50 shot at surviving to the mine, which is... it's just a coin flip, but he does pass. Then the multi-rifle against the Shrouded... he's not even guaranteed to win that one either, because the Shrouded's got camo, and it's just 3 dice versus 1, but he does do it, and the Shrouded does die, so everything seems to go right for him there. As he's doing that, the tiger creature dodges out of cover and sort of gets in the way of Shona. Anytime somebody activates within zone of control, and when they're not using stealth, you basically get to move around with your dodge, which is a new thing, so try to abuse that as much as you can. Shona wants to go after my medtech, so she's now moving forward, shooting at the Tiger with her SMG. Tiger is +3 to dodge, so on a 16, and does manage to get a bit closer to her. And then, as she's coming through to here, she's going to be taking on the Dr. Worm and finishing him off. So this is the moment in the game where my opponent said, "Hey, is the flash pulse alive or not?" And I said, "No, it's fine." And then he said, "No, I thought I'd killed it with the bulleteer." So we went back through the orders and discussed it for a bit, and I pointed out that we both remember having a conversation about whether I had courage or not on the remote, and we wouldn't have had that conversation if I'd not survived, so I must have survived. So we talked about potentially moving Shona back and redoing all of the orders, but look, it's just a casual game. In a tournament, I might have demanded that got retracted, but as it's played, we're just going to count the Flash Pulse as surviving, but the Flash Pulse didn't get to ARO against Shona as she was moving across towards this position, which does ultimately mean that I'm going to lose my my Dr. Worm to that, because Shona just comes around here, blasts him point blank with the SMG. No bad luck for him here. The Doc does die, which means that I can't revive my Q drones. So, unfortunate. Mistakes were made, but that's okay. He gets a small advantage as a result of that. Importantly, he does need to spend a last order of his turn moving the Knight of Justice from one part of the building through to here. That's a terrible color for it. Let's go back to pink. Because otherwise he won't have a foot in the zone. And this is really important, because if I go back to the original photograph here of the table, the Link team is set up over here, but the deployment zone just cuts off the edge of the building. So the Knight needs to move into there so it can actually control this quadrant with his points. He's got nothing in this zone, so I'm going to be able to take it. And over on this side, not particularly much. And then on this side, this is where all of his troops are. He's basically got Shona, the Bulleteer, Gunnar, Agnes, you name it. Even the Kahu, I think, is up the top. So that's quite important. The knight does move over there. Alright, so finally it's my turn, and I've decided to move with the Anathematic, but one of the problems was that the Anathematic actually is in line of sight of the knight. So the knight, after it moves there, we both, to our horror, realize that he can actually try and discover me, rolls a 5 for the discover, then realizes he needed a 4 because it was long range, camo, cover, all that kind of thing, TO camo. So I got off very lightly there. The Anathematic basically has to move out of line of sight of the knight and then keep moving again and allow people to discover him. But he ends up in this situation here. Note that Shona has taken a wound because the tiger creature traded a chain rifle into her. So she is wounded, but she's got NWI. Now, the sad state of things is that as the Anathematic gets moving forward, Shona and Gunnar can actually do some dodges. So as the Anathematic moves up, he unfortunately doesn't kill the Bulleteer. The Bulleteer passes his armor save and his BTS save, which really frustrated me because I need as many orders as I can get here. I'm a little bit depleted after losing a few troopers. Kodali not on the table yet. So that was really frustrating. Continuing to move forward, people dodging around, Gunnar coming around here. They may eventually engage him, which will mean game over for me, so I've got to be careful. Eventually, as I'm moving back behind this particular corner, we do pick off the bot, so that goes down eventually. And as I continue wheeling and dealing and maneuvering around, we picked off Shona. It's just taken a lot of orders for me to do that. So we've got Gunnar over here, we've got Shona being shot up, and then Gunnar just dodges towards me, which is extremely annoying. Then we have Kodali, which shows up in his back arc to just blast him, hoping to completely remove him rather than making him just dogged, but unfortunately, as she does so, she renders him dogged, which is frustrating for me. I mean, I'm getting really pissed off at this point with how badly my luck's going through this game. But Gunnar does survive. He's NWI, he's dogged rather, so he will die at the end of the turn. That means that Kodali can now move across and take on some other people. She wants to destroy Agnes, who's in the bottom side of this building. And the idea here is that Kodali is worth enough points that she's worth more than the Kahu upstairs. But I do need to deplete his orders and remove the things that could potentially counter Kodali later. The Anathematic moves into this wall to gain a bit of cover against other things, particularly the Kahu, and does successfully get engaged by Gunnar at this point in time, which again, extremely frustrating, just whiffing a lot of dice rolls here, but luckily he's going to die at the end of the turn rather than getting to attack me, so I move the Liberto over to this zone as well. That's the end of game round 1, and there are actually no points on the board at this stage because I've got the 2 zones closest to me and he's got the 2 zones closest to him, because Kodali didn't have enough movement to move into the second zone, and I think he had some troops there anyway. So, Svalarheima turn 2, we've got the Sensabot moving up, doesn't manage to discover the Liberto as it goes. We then have the Link team going for a bit of a trek, moving down from their cover, and they are just rolling out as a big Link, moving past this objective as they do so, but not successfully pressing the button. I think they failed an attempt from Richard. And then we have the very big play here of the Knight of Justice training his missile launcher at the Anathematic who's in the distance. And I want you guys to appreciate how unlucky the Anathematic has been. Near the end of my turn, I shot Gunnar and didn't kill him, and instead he engaged me. Had that not happened, I might have been able to spend a command token and move the Anathematic into a better spot. If he'd actually failed some armor saves earlier on, I would have actually killed things a lot quicker and again had more orders to get him into cover. But because of me being really hideously unlucky with this Anathematic, he's just basically out in the open. My opponent just has to spend a few orders and his Knight of Justice is able to shoot me. So that's going to be 2 dice on 14s, because he's +3 for range, +3 for the Link, then -6 for TO camo. And shamefully I'm dodging on a 13, because Anathematic only has Fizz 13 despite being this big, beefy creature, which again I find really distasteful. McMurray's somehow 16, Anathematic 13, doesn't make much sense to me. My opponent gets a crit and a hit on me. I roll like a 1 and take 7 armor saves, and the Anathematic is destroyed. Now, it's important not to lose hope here. I decided not to get tilted about that because, given the position, he's lost all the troopers that are really aggressive at doing damage to me, and I still have second turn, so there's a chance of me actually winning, even with only just a few troopers, and that's the kind of mentality you need to have with Infinity when you're playing this kind of strategy, or any kind of strategy really, because it's a very variance-heavy game, and even if you're unlucky early on, if a few things go right for you later, you can swing it back. He stands up with his Kahu now and shoots at my Imatron before moving around, and then he puts other people in suppression fire, I think. As his Knight of Justice moves towards my side of the table to get into my zone for the scenario, I attack him with my Shrouded, and the Shrouded now puts the Knight of Justice into isolation state, thanks to Oblivion, I believe, halving his BTS. So this is why you take hackers, guys. They're very good in the new edition, especially since we expect more hackable things because there's a limitation on lists. Because of that 15 order limitation, people aren't going to be spamming non-hackable troops all of the time. So I think these kind of shrouded hackers are very, very good now. Okay, so the Knight is hit by Oblivion, is isolated, and unfortunately for the Knight, the value of this one trooper is not greater than the Shrouded and the Speculo, so I still hold this quadrant. So, and as he does that, Liberto dodges away to safety because he came in line of sight of the Liberto as well. So that's fine for the Liberto as well. Attempts to move back to this objective, but still doesn't manage to press the button, so that's unfortunate. And because his link team's broken, because the Knight of Justice was isolated, he spends a command token and puts all 4 Fusiliers into suppression fire. And that's the turn. So my turn, this guy moves out, the Kahu shoots at him, but he does dodge it. This is Combined Army turn 2. And the obvious play is very obvious here. We move Kodali up through the building, move over there. There's a ladder on that side taking up to the top, and then I'm going to be able to shoot at the Kahu in the back. I believe Kodali has stealth, which makes that possible. Let me just double check that I wasn't cheating through all of that. Yep, so she does have stealth. So this is important because it removes a key piece and allows Kodali to get some scoring going on, which is a big deal. So she comes up through here, blasts him in the rear with her double assault pistol, or assault pistol +1 burst, and that's the end of him. Tiger creature repositioning behind this building near to where the Knight of Justice is, just in case I need to spring out and try and munch on him. The Liberto tucks into the building where he can't be shot at. He's the only thing controlling this quadrant closest to me on the left, places a mine to help defend him. And the thing is, I now get 2 objective points. It's a 2-0 lead for Combined Army despite losing the Anathematic last turn, and it's all down to possession and the fact that these missions are still very much about just surviving and putting stuff into zones very easily if you don't lose too much. And if you've got a lot of camo, a lot of good defense, defending is in some ways easier in this new edition with the new dodging and the new hacking and the new armor saves and new crits. I hope they change their missions around a little bit. Still, here we are. The Knight, I attempt to hack him again because I'm going to add Carbonite to the already isolated state. Luckily, I managed to Carbonite him as well. He dodges away from me as he's being hacked because that's a legal thing to do. So he's out of my hacking range now, but the Knight is both isolated and immobilized, which is really what we want. So, end of game round, it's 2-0 for Combined Army. His turn, moves forward with the sensor bot and attempts to take the console, but fails, having some bad luck with his whip checks. Richard Quinn, moving away from this console, does finally pass it. Pano Whip's not great, but they do get there eventually, and they've put 1 point on the board, so it's a 2-1 to Combined Army now. As he's moving over here, he decides to use the second short skill to come in line of fire of the Speculo. So he moves here first, stops, and then moves again, and there's the Speculo killer line of sight through here. And he's doing this to see if he can bait out my Speculo because he could kill me later, and if I don't shoot him, then he can shoot back at me. I decided to take the shot because I'm hitting on 15, and if he fails the combi rifle armor save, I'm actually I'm actually in a really good position because it means that he can't easily take that console anymore. I've killed a model, and I still have points in this zone, and the Knight of Justice can't move into my area because he's immobilized and isolated. Hilariously, he did attempt to spend his first irregular order on him resetting on a 1, because I think the isolation and immobilization stacks. Well, that's what he told me anyway. But unfortunately for him, the Shrouded hits and kills Richard Quinn, which does give me a big leg up in the game. So quite lucky, but I've been extremely unlucky in other turns. Okay, so here we go. That's basically it. The Knight trying to reset doesn't. Then he starts moving out with his Engineer and realizes, oops, what I should have done is kept the irregular order for him until later, and then revive his zones, repair his status effects with the Engineer. So that's what he ultimately does. Engineer moving out. Engineer's moving for the console on my side of the table, and also putting his points there because the Engineer's worth more than the Liberto. So I'll have to do something about the Engineer, otherwise I won't actually control that quadrant at the end of the game. An Engineer does eventually make it to the Knight, and you can sort of appreciate why he shouldn't have spent his irregular order until now, because the Knight actually has his immobilization and isolation removed by the Palbot. So Engineer does go over to this console and does, I believe, control it. And then, no, I can't remember if he controlled it or not. I can't 100% remember if he grabbed that. What happens, though, is the Knight does move over this box and takes a heavy pistol shot. He doesn't want to contend with the monofilament blade MA2 of the Speculo, and rightly so. It's a pretty even fight there and very risky for the Knight. So he blaps him with the heavy pistol, so it's going to be 17s against a 15 on one dice with the smoke grenade. So pretty close. Odds are favorable for the Knight, but luckily the Specular Killer wins the trade-off with the smoke, so thwarts that attempt, which is a very important part of the play here. In my turn, my follow-up turn, the Knight is, I think, again hit by a Carbonite or a Mobilization. No, he's hit by a stun, actually, from the other side of the battlefield with a Flash Pulse. So in my next turn, I thought I could throw a Smoke Grenade. Then we reread the rules and found that, yep, stun actually does go away at the end of the turn, just like it did in N3. So that's not something which has changed to N4 as far as we know. So this is not actually a smoke attempt at all. After looking through my options, I realized that I could actually win if I kill the Engineer, because then I will actually continue to hold my quadrant over here, because it's basically just this Knight versus the Shrouded and the Specular Killer, so I have more points. This model here, Richard Quinn, is unconscious. And then if the Liberto stays alive and Kodali is able to move back into the zone here, that's 3 zones to 1, and I'll end up on 4 objective points. Only problem is that to get to this bot, so not to this bot, to the Engineer, she actually has to come down the ladder of the building. We noticed that as she's coming down the ladder, the bot just barely has line of sight through this window at the top point of the ladder. Not the bottom point, just the top point of the ladder. So I deliberated about this for a while. I looked at some other options, moving a Flash Pulse up from my deployment. I had a Flash Pulse bot in my deployment zone, which could have moved up to supplement the points of the Liberto. Then it would have been 8 for the Liberto, 8 for the Flash Pulse bot, is 16 against the 15 of the Engineer, so I win the game by 1 point. But that wouldn't have worked because he had a Knight of Justice still there able to missile me, and I didn't want to risk that. So Kodali, after some deliberation, goes for the action movie play, the cinematic play, coming down the stairs, firing the combi rifle at the bot. Sadly, the bot does have a Flash Pulse, which is an even better option, so me hitting on like 14s on 3 dice versus his 1 dice on like a 16. Luckily for me, I won, but he passed his armor saves, but getting down to the bottom of the stairs, I'm no longer visible. Kodali is now able to come over to the Engineer. So with like 1 order left after this, she blasts the Engineer point blank with burst 5 assault pistols and hits him 4 times. He passes every single freaking armor save. I'm not kidding. That's how unlucky I am sometimes. Engineer just passes all 4 of them, which just leaves me fuming, as you can imagine. And I have to spend the last order moving back into the zone. I can't really shoot him. Because she spent an order sort of moving there and back again, so then she moves back with the last order, and that is enough to secure me a draw. But there is one last thing I can do with my very last irregular order. It's the Liberto. He pulls out around the doorway and goes for the shot onto the Machinist. Machinist shoots back with the combi rifle, so I opt to use the Chain Colt instead of the light shotgun, because if they both die, I still win, because then I'll have 2 zones to his 1. So that's the thinking there. So the engineer actually shoots him. Liberto just survives anyway, and he fails his armor save. So it's a victory to Combined Army. But only just. He's got 2 points for the consoles. It would have been a draw had I not achieved this. But you guys can see the effort and the moves that I made to get it happening. As I like to do in some of these bat reps, just let's go through the luck factor, because it was pretty huge. My opponent winning the dice roll for first turn does matter. I think I made a small mistake. Maybe I should have gone for first turn. But you can see how easy it is to win with second turn, provided enough things go right for you. I was just tragically unlucky with the Anathematic trying to do things in Kodali in turn 1. His army passed so many dodge checks and armor saves and all that sort of thing. I was left in a terrible position. So that kind of sucked. However, getting those hacking attempts off in the night was very good. The Specular Killer picking up the shot on Richard Quinn, well, that wasn't terribly unlucky. That was kind of expected. I feel like my opponent did take some unnecessary risks. But all in all, it was a well-played game. My opponent did make some really good plays. I played pretty well. There's only a few things that I would change. Both of our lists are very experimental at this point, so it's hard to treat this as a high-level Infinity play when we're sort of making some stabs in the dark about what's going to be useful. But every game I play, I'm going to get closer to that sort of solved level of knowing, exactly how things are going to pan out. I don't think it will take too long for us to get to this point in 4 where everybody sort of knows what's powerful and what's not, and the game stagnates a little bit like it did in N3. It's a very playable game, and I think it will still be enjoyable for a while. But yeah, I'm a bit disappointed with some of the new changes. I will be putting out some videos in the near future, and I do mean the near future, about my more detailed thoughts and the accounting of the balance of what's good and bad, so do look out for that stuff. And of course, keep playing TTS. I'm in the Discord, so hit me up. Alright guys, well that's my first N4 live bat rep from the photos. Hope you guys enjoyed it.